What's going on, YouTube family? We're going to go ahead and watch Ben Shapiro and Brian Keating talk about scientists discussing the Bible. Also, I'm smoking a Macondo. Pretty good. Light work, light work. I'm also going to go ahead and watch Ben Shapiro and Lex, also FRIDMEN, talk about why does God allow cruelty. But let's go ahead and start with this one first about scientists and the Bible. Let's get it on right away.
One of the things that you talk about in losing the Nobel Prize is the resistance to this idea that there was an origin to the universe, and specifically that a lot of that was based in an anti-religious sentiment, which is, this looks a lot like the very beginning of the Bible, and that scares a lot of scientists.
Yeah. So, back then in the 1950s and so forth, when Fred Hoyle, who was an amazing astronomer, he won, basically the runner-up prize to the Nobel Prize, Crayford Prize. He ended up saying that the reason that scientists are so adamant about the Big Bang is because they're obsessed with Genesis 1:1. Now, can you imagine, Lawrence Krauss or somebody, famous from it, like, oh, I'm obsessed, I have to prove the Genesis 1. I mean, it's absurd. And as you pointed out earlier, most scientists are atheists. I mean, the majority of the National Academy of Sciences, most prestigious organization on earth, are declared atheist, or 20% are agnostic or don't know, and 10% believe, say. And so it's interesting that how much we've evolved just since the 1950s. And then to actually have that brought into focus, and that people now accept without a doubt that there was a beginning of what we call the observable universe. That does not mean that we've witnessed time equals zero. And that's where things get really interesting, because we don't have a theory that describes how properties of matter, of space and time itself. I mean, have you ever thought, let's say time began.
Okay.
What causes something to begin when there's no something to begin with, right?
In the beginning.
How did time change from nothing into something? And these are questions that have perfectly good answers, potentially, but we don't have the data. So my job is to collect that data.
Okay.
Or perhaps refute these models by collecting data that is objectionable under those hypotheses.
So in this particular context, obviously a lot of religious believers say, well, got a good answer for you, right? What kicked off time?
I know.
We have this whole religious literature that's built around the idea that there was a thing that kicked off time, and that thing was God. This is what we call God in the Thomistic model. But the scientists have been promoting a bunch of different theories as to why the universe was created the way that it was, why it exists in the way that it does. And it seems like a lot of this is a response to some of the arguments, yes, that some religious believers have made about the fine-tuning of the universe, the idea that a certain number of things had to go exactly right for us to be here at this time. And so you hear arguments made on a fairly routine basis about how, well, that's just how randomness works. We're just the lucky ones. And religious believers argue back, well, but why are we the lucky ones? And that's a pretty convenient argument, that we happen to be the lucky ones. Why wouldn't we have been one of the non-lucky ones?
It is convenient.
So how do you circle that square? I mean, how do you come down on that particular debate?
I mean, I think for me, it's so much fun to think about these things. So nowadays, you're alluding to the anthropic principle, which I'll describe in a minute, and the multiverse. It's funny, in scientific circles with my scientist friends, I can't say multiverse without getting into a fight.
Yeah,
and
I was about to say,
like, we're going to take sides, and some people say that's not even science, or they'll say that's pure nonsense,
like
or they'll say this
stuff.
is the best answer that scientists have. And the people out there, when I'm not comparing me to like Chen Eager or whatever, they'll say this guy believes that the hypothesis, which scientists just use as a working tool, and they'll reject it. I mean, they have much more faith in kind of the dispassionate scientist, which has led to this real, canard almost and overused stereotype that scientists are these dispassionate people that have no feelings, have no objective, have no motive, no biases. And, in the book, I count many different biases, prejudices that scientists, including me, are afflicted by.
Right, that
and
they
I think
go
it's
through.
important to realize that when you have these discussions, when they turn heated, and I think, it's interesting, I never hear from the religious. I hear crazy things from religious people, that are just non-scientific to bolster their own hypothesis. They're perfectly willing to have confirmation bias sometimes too.
Of course, because the bias of faith.
In the case of the scientists, I think this is touching back on some deep thing within them, a sensitive nerve that, if there was something true about religion, then I have all these obligations, and I have enough to do it, at the faculty club already, so I don't,
Right.
As I said, it's the hardest 3-hour-a-week job in the world, but I think it's very interesting to think about these questions of what generated this new pursuit in science. Was it a reaction to these religious explanations? So Robert Jastrow, who worked at Goddard Space Center, and he wrote a book called God and the Astronomers. Now, he was a declared agnostic, and he said, upon the discovery of this cosmic background radiation that I studied through telescopes like BICEP and the Simons Observatory, that scientists who were secular, climbed to the top of the mountain and found a band of theologians rejoicing up there. On the other hand, when the Big Bang was first proposed by a Belgian priest named Lemaitre, he implicitly told the Pope, do not use this as evidence for the creation narrative of Genesis 1:1. And he was intellectually honest about that this is not necessarily, should not be used. Again, these are non-overlapping magisteria in Stephen Jay Gould's language. These are two different things. I mean, to think about, reading the Bible as a science book is as absurd as reading A Brief History of Time and thinking, oh, that's how I'm going to raise my children.
Right.
That's my obligations
Okay.
as a moral, ethical being. So I think these controversies to me are so much fun because these are two puzzles, and we may go to our graves and not answer these questions.
Right. Take it
to
with
not
you.
think about them, I think it leaves a life of a slight impoverishment that my colleagues, unfortunately, many of them too, love to think about.
It is fun to
talk
ask.
about.
Yeah.
Though they stay in the closet about it.
Very well, Mr. Ben Shapiro. That was awesome. That was pretty awesome. I felt like they had a lot to say, but I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I know verbatim what they're saying because I'm not a scientist and I don't know much about what they really have going on. But with what they said, it was pretty much just letting me know about the argument that yes, it gets to a point where Christians just want to Christians will argue, or like Christians will debate non-Christians about the creation and how did we get here. And a lot of Christians just say, well, God made us because it's the easiest thing. That's our bias as Christians. We want to believe that God made us, or we do believe that God made us, that we're made in His image. Everybody is, and even then we're not just some random things that happened. Whether you're atheist and you believe in the Big Bang, and you believe that you came from a bowl of rock soup, and then that soup came alive somehow, and then somehow it became a fish, and then like a salamander, and then a horse, and then a human, and then a chimpanzee, and then some sort of orangutan. Like, you can believe all these outlandish things, but then takes a lot of faith, in my opinion. I'm a young earth creationist. Like, I'll stand by that. But with what they were saying about where did God come from or why scientists discuss the Bible, I think the Bible is one of the very few religious textbooks or religious texts that's used in other branches of, I guess, knowledge beyond philosophy and religion, right? It's sometimes used in archaeology because there's people who want to search for like Sodom and Gomorrah or King David's like location in terms of where his temple was, or other biblical locations. But with what they were saying here, man, really what I understood was it was pretty much just a very positive discussion about why scientists oppose the Bible, which is true. I think scientists are just some people who don't want to believe in God or who are atheists. Like, they don't want to believe in God because they don't want to be told what to do. I think they enjoy themselves way too much in different areas of life or different areas of their so-called biases in their daily routine, that they don't want to be told what to do. They don't want to be told to love their neighbor, love themselves, respect your body here, respect their body there, do this, do that, don't do this, don't do that, forgetting that God's rules are in place to like protect us from so many other things in this world. They're not just there to like hinder us or prohibit us, right? Which it could come off that way because God in the Bible has a lot of like, I guess, negative connotations about what He's done: genocide, killing, incest, rape. You have all these biblical figures doing all these crazy outlandish things pre-Jesus, of course. And it's like, well, God, if you're so real, then how come there's no real sense of morality or ethics beyond the people that you chose? Which in a sense could be used because philosophy and, well, science is pretty much anything that's repeated testing that's been proven to be true. So that's why it's called the evolution theory, because it's not a theory, because it's not proven by definition. But in this case, with what they were discussing, I think it was pretty interesting. I don't feel like I gained a lot of knowledge. I feel like I pretty much just heard two grown men talking about the Bible in a way that I've already heard it discussed before. I know I may not look it, but I try to educate myself and fill myself with knowledge and become all things to all people to an extent, of course, and kind of see where God takes me from there, I don't judge anybody. I don't try to critique anybody. I don't try to point the finger. I really just openly do my best to love my neighbor. I don't always succeed, but sometimes it gets a little difficult, but that happens with all of us. With that being said, let's go ahead and watch Ben Shapiro and Alex Friedman. Why does God allow cruelty?
Why does God allow cruelty and suffering in the world?
There's two types of cruelty and suffering. So if we're talking about human cruelty and suffering, because God does not intervene to prevent people from exercising their free will, because
Amen.
To do so would be to deprive human beings of the choice that makes them human.
Yes,
It is the sin of the Garden of Eden, basically, is that God could make you an angel, in which case you wouldn't have the choice to do the wrong thing. But so long as we are going to allow for cause and effect in a universe shaped by your choice, cruelty and evil are going to exist. And then there's the question of just the natural cruelty and vicissitudes of life. And the answer there is, I think that God obscures himself. I think that if God were to appear in all of his glory to people on a regular basis, I think that it would make faith, you wouldn't need it. There'd be no such thing as faith. Right? It would just be reality.
Yep.
Nobody has to prove to you that the sun rises every day. If God is to allow us the choice to believe in him, which is the ultimate choice from a religious point of view, then he's going to have to obscure himself behind tragedy and horror and all those other things. I mean, this is a fairly well-known Kabbalistic concept called Tzimtzum in Judaism, which is the idea that when God created the universe, he sort of withdrew in order to make space for all of these things to happen.
Powerful. concise, short, sweet, and to the point. Yes, I believe exactly what he said, 100%. Of course, though, Ben Shapiro being Jewish, Christians have the acknowledgement of Christ, which has come to redeem planet Earth. And well, planet Earth in terms of like the people here are Christians who accept Christ. And you know, I think it's true, because even then I have a lot of my non-Christian friends who ask me like, well, why does God allow all this evil to happen? There's kids in third world countries starving, there's people with no water, there's people who are getting raped, killed, molested, whatever, and like dying of cancer, dying of sickness, and all these things. And as Christians, it's difficult because sometimes we know that we don't have all the answers, and we try to do our best. We try to seem God as all powerful, all knowing, all loving, and then we get hit with these answers. And it's one of those things that, like the other previous video just said, we can ask all we want and sometimes take it to our grave, and we could ask God when we meet him. But for now, sometimes it makes no point to argue these things, because it's like talking about why God does cruel things, or why God allows cruelty. Is that really going to make you a better person? Is that really going to make you more Christ-like? Is that really going to make you have an initiative to want to share the gospel with others and let them know that there's good news out there, that we don't have to suffer in this world, rather we will be healed in the next world with Christ? And it gets a little daunting sometimes, because a lot of times Christians, not only do we not have the answers, but we get frozen, and sometimes we even lose our faith, or we lose the joy of our salvation, and we're no longer happy with what God has given us, what God has done for us, what God has done through us, and what God is going to do for us in the future. I think oftentimes Christians have this such high expectation of what they want God to do, and then it doesn't come through, and then all of a sudden we're like, you know what, Lord, I don't need you right now. Go ahead and F off. I'm about to bounce. Well, what does that get you? Nothing at all. If anything, yes, like I said, you lose the joy of your salvation, and you lose almost your reason and purpose as to why you became a Christian in the first place. Because remember, it's not about you, it's about Christ and what he has already done for you. All you have to do is really be willing to spread out your hands and love your neighbor, teaching them, admonishing them, ministering to them, anointing them, using the power of the Holy Spirit to help you and to help them. I seriously enjoyed these videos. I really wish Ben Shapiro could become a Christian already, because he'd be great. But regardless, we're all on our own walk, we're all on our own journey. Life is but a vapor. Like the wind, it comes and goes, and by all means, do with it what you can and love your neighbors. Love God with all your heart, strength, and mind, and just see how far you will go. Try not to give up, man. I know I've had moments of where I've wanted to give up. I've wanted to do things in terms of like, you know what, I kind of don't need this right now. Lord, please just stop. It's getting like overwhelming, but I have to keep persevering, you know. Like, I'm not a big YouTuber, but I'm doing this because I feel like what I have to say is important. And who knows, maybe what I might say could help you out or could help somebody else. Feel free to share any of these videos. You could share it, delete it, edit it, crop it up, do whatever you want to it, react to it as well. Really, I don't care as long as the message is getting out there. That's what's most important to me. But alright, this was pretty good. This was pretty good. I hope you guys enjoyed these videos. There's always more to come. Thank you all for watching, and as always, stay blessed.